Life is hard. That's just a given. Life has many experiences that make everything complicated, so much so that it can be difficult to sort through. Recently, there was a show that comments on this fact of life, and that show is SSSS Gridman. On the surface, SSSS Gridman serves as a loving homage to Japanese tokusatsu shows like Godzilla, Super Sentai, and specifically the original Gridman from 1993. At first, Gridman seems to be just a tribute to these shows that have had a lasting impact on Japanese culture. Everything about Gridman's aesthetic expresses that the creators have a deep love for the genre, and as a result, it is a loving piece of art. However, even though Gridman starts off as a typical Monster of the Week show with some interesting twists along the way, it is not until the second half that it finally starts to reveal its true colors. From then on, Gridman transforms from this ordinary action show into a compelling story about a young girl's journey of re-entering society. The villain Akane serves as the antithesis to the main heroes, attempting to destroy anything that she finds issue with. Every episode, she fights against our heroes with monsters of her own creation. But as we go on, it is revealed that Akane has created this world that suits her every need and desire. She gets good grades, she's pretty, and everyone adores her. Akane has created a world she can call her own, and she simply destroys anything that doesn't fit within that ideal world. As Gridman goes on, Akane starts to deteriorate as she starts to have less and less control over her world. The ideal world where everyone loves her unconditionally starts to show cracks, and as a result, she is reminded of the real world where everything is not perfect, where you don't have complete control over everyone and everything, where things don't always stay the same. In response, Akane tries harder and harder to keep this world together, either by creating more threatening monsters to defeat, or even by putting matters into her own hands. Yet, despite this, Akane starts to recognize that she has no real control over the events in her own life, which only causes her to regress further and further into this world she has created. Unable to accept the hardships of life, Akane has locked herself away into this imaginary world, fighting her hardest to stay inside a fake reality. Akane believes that she can simply run away from all her problems and live out the rest of her life in a world of her choosing. Although, as her story continues, Akane starts to realize that running away from the real world is not truly living. Running away from your problems is merely a temporary solution, and sooner or later, you have to confront them head on. And that's why, at its heart, Gridman is a story about a young girl who must learn to gain strength to face the world. In spite of this, Gridman does not paint a negative picture regarding escapism. Akane represents all of us, as many times it is easier to retreat into our own little worlds to escape from our problems and responsibilities. This can take many forms, from simply enjoying a good movie or video game for a few hours to staying within the comfortable confines of our home and not wanting to interact with others. Many see escapism as dangerous, believing that it can distract us from being productive members of society. Gridman, though, takes a different stance on this issue, as it was still Akane's experiences in her fabricated world that ultimately gave her the strength to move forward. Akane ran away from reality because she was forced to leave behind everything that she knew, including her friends, her school, and her childhood home. Facing a situation where her life lost all sense of structure, Akane felt that the only response was to escape from it all. But even though Akane runs away from reality, it is this journey that ends up making her a stronger person by the end. Gridman does not outright condemn the act of escapism. Instead, the creators have portrayed escapism as having a unique place within people's lives. It is important for us to understand that briefly escaping from your responsibilities is not necessarily a bad thing, and that it can actually be healthy. Life is difficult, and it can throw its fair share of surprises at us, especially when we least expect it. And escapism plays an important role in that. It can help us to process these difficult moments and learn how to properly deal with them. Even if it takes us a bit longer to go through that process, that just means it's what we need at the time, and hopefully, we'll come out better for it. As human beings, we must teach ourselves to keep going, even in our most difficult times, and a crucial part of this is to momentarily step away from the stresses of our life in any way that we can. Admittedly, sometimes we can get carried away with this and step away from our responsibilities for too long. But whenever this happens, no matter how hard it may be, it is important to always pull ourselves back to where we belong. In this way, it is okay if it takes us a bit longer to come back, as long as we return stronger than when we left.